This is a Flying Cow production. Moo, 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 moo,
Well, hello and welcome back to the Academy. That's right, here on the Flying Cow. This is the show where we take a year and we talk about the top films from that year, top in quotation marks. We are, of course, talking still about 1994. This is our third and final episode of our discussion of 1994 before we have our big award ceremony for this year. But like I said, we've still got 5 more films to talk about. But I'm not here alone. First of all, I am your host, Clay Johnson, the Flying Cow himself. And I have here with me today, Hannah Kiefer and Jack Allison. How we doing today, guys?
Doing all right. Ready to talk about our last set of movies here.
I'm okay. I'm kind of frustrated because I don't know if this ever happens to you guys. I keep going to my backyard like the past 2 weeks, and I found like this pile of cigarettes on my back porch. Like not like a couple, like a couple butts, but actual like piles of mostly unsmoked cigarettes. And I don't know why. I have a ring back there, but it sure as hell isn't picking anything up. I've been watching a lot of horror movies, so maybe like this is like a bit more my neighbors is doing. I don't know, but. Like, this is like a little bit of real talk, Chuck. I just don't know why that's, have you guys ever, is this like a thing the kids are doing now? Is this like what they call the chuggy? The big chuggy?
No, it sounds like a personal problem to me, Jack.
I mean, not my personal problem. I don't smoke.
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, on that note, we watched movies.
Yes, we did. We watched some movies, and so obviously the first group was the Oscar nominees. The second group was, a little bit more kind of highbrow. We watched a lot of, foreign films, and there was documentaries and stuff like that in there. And then this group was just kind of weird. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, it was just kind of a little odd. It was just weird. I don't know if there's a whole lot more I can say about that. What did you guys think? Just about the group as a whole.
I mean, we just talked about how we rank these guys, and this is a tough list. I mean, yeah, the first one of these we had pretty clear-cut, basic, quote-unquote great films because they're more, it's Academy voted, so it's a lot of what we perceive by more common standards, I guess, of like what makes a good movie, whereas our second week had a little bit more of a mixed bag as far as artsier stuff. This week is just kind of all over the place. I mean, you have a very commercially and critically successful film in there. You have a very, very, very niche artsy film. I'm looking at a couple of these other ones. You have a very critically well-known film, not necessarily acclaimed, but well-known for a certain critique.
Uh-huh.
And then 2 others I hadn't seen before by acclaimed filmmakers. From various
Both
backgrounds.
of which were critically acclaimed, but I think one was a little bit more financially successful than the other one. But
Sure. Yeah, I honestly didn't know too much about these other 2 going into this episode, so my background understanding of them are a little bit vague. But that's what we're here to discuss.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Of the sets that we've had so far, this was the only one where I have felt like I had things to say about each of them. the past ones, there were always some where I was like, I don't really care, this is fine. And like even if it was good, things where I was like, I just don't have a lot to say about it. And these all are they're distinct in a way that
we lost Hannah.
best picture nominees sometimes are not track ones. And so I'm excited to get to talk about these because it is a wild mix and I love that.
Yeah, I think we all have quite a few things to say. I know Jack in our chat, just about every time he would watch a movie, we would know about it because he would say, I have things to say.
Yeah, I can, like I said, I can already say that this isn't going to be a G-rated podcast from my side of things based on certain
I
things
don't
in the
think it
films we
ever
watched.
is. But
Fair. Just a heads up to you and everyone else.
yeah. All right. So why don't we go ahead and get into our list? First of all, cursory overview, as we usually do, or at least we've now established that we do. I'm going to let you guys know the 5 films that we are talking about this week. We are talking about Satantango, Muriel's Wedding, Heavenly Creatures, North, and The Lion King. And so we're going to start off with our discussion of Satantango. And normally at this point, I would play a trailer, but if you have any awareness of the movie, surprise, surprise, there's not an audio-friendly trailer out there. But I can tell you this, if you really want to know what it's like to watch this movie, just find a spot, doesn't matter inside, outside, and just stare at it for a minute and a half. That's your trailer. Yeah. But yeah, so this film obviously was came out in 1994. It was directed by Bela Tarr. It was based on the 1985 novel of the same name by a Hungarian novelist. This is a Hungarian film, and I am not going to butcher that man's name. But like I said, it is based on a novel. And one thing I don't know about you guys, but I had a lot of time to look up and read about this film while I was watching it. Because there's not a lot of action in this film, but just a cursory idea of the plot, if you can say it has a plot. Basically, it is about a farm town in Hungary that is basically on the verge of collapse. A man that they all thought was dead has now come into town, and basically he is swindling them out of the little money they have left. And that's basically the plot of the film. There's a lot more things that happen in the film. Well, I say a lot. There are more things that happen. Oh, I've kind of buried the lead. This is a 7-hour film. And
Nearly 8.
yeah, it's very long. And I don't know about you guys, but the copy that I got was broken up into 3 sections. And I think the first section was nearly 2.5 hours. The second one was 2 hours. And then the third one was practically 3 hours.
Yeah, and that's actually how they've broken it up in theatrical screenings of the film as well. They've had intermissions of those brackets.
Yeah. So I I'm like, oh, it's 3 sections. I can knock it out easily at the very least in 3 days. No problem. I can watch a 2 to 3 hour movie a day. That's not an issue. I fell asleep in the first half hour. And it's not to say, like, here's the thing. In no way do I feel that this is a bad film. It's actually a very well-made film. What the artist is saying here is very obvious, and there's a lot of good in this film, but it very much feels like you are watching a movie that was shot for shot an adaptation of a book, because There's even a quote where the director said that there is nothing in the book that is not on the film, and I believe it. The problem is, and there are even narration bits that are actually some really good prose. The first bit of narration, I was like, "Ooh, this is good. I'm kind of into this." The problem is that the parts of the book where you're really just getting the character's introspection, but that they're not actually doing anything. We're getting that, but from the visual side, we're not actually getting the character's inner dialogue. So literally there are moments where for 5 minutes, we stare at a window with rain coming down it, or we watch characters walk down a road all the way down the road. Or there are moments where we are staring at a table and we're hearing conversation, but it's actually happening in a different part of the room. So we're not seeing the people that are talking. We're staring at a table. It's just all this, and obviously, this is all for a purpose. It's all basically selling the bleakness and kind of the kind of how useless this struggle is. It's just, there's so much of it, and it is so much, like I said, there are a lot of good things to get out of this film, and I think I got a lot of them, but this is probably not a film I will ever watch again. There were certainly some parts that the second section of the film, there was a part where a young girl.
Do we want to talk about that scene once we've all kind of got our heads
sure,
together?
Yeah,
on
let's
the film?
do that. Let's,
because I think we're all gonna have similar thoughts on that particular moment.
Yeah. But yeah, there are definitely some moments here and there. There are parts that I'm into, and then there are parts that really bother me. But yeah, I'm gonna let somebody else pick up.
Hannah, would you care to?
Sure, I'll go for it. So yeah, I knew this was going to be an undertaking going into this, particularly because one of a filmmaker I know who does similar things, who is a little bit more accessible, who I also really hate for similar reasons, is Andrei Tarkovsky, who has that same style of, we're going to now spend the next 3 minutes looking inside a pipe with just the sound of rain, and it doesn't work for me. Like, I understand a lot of times sometimes what they're trying to do, and it just doesn't always land for me. There were moments where it did for this. I found I felt like I got like flashes of, oh, okay, I understand. I understand what's happening here. And for me, a lot of that was the section with the doctor who just sits and watches people out his window. For me, the very literal fly on a wall, like, we're not moving, we don't have exciting camera angles, we're just watching characters just do their thing. Really, for me, that really brought out the how long and similar his days are, that we just see him do this routine, and the camera watches every single moment from him getting up to another place to pick up a new notebook, to come back to find his spot in the notebook, to pick up his pen, to look out and make sure he's still watching things. It's every little bit of that is part of the action. And most of the time, yes, I did zone out a lot. I don't think I fell asleep at any point. There were, however, 2 separate moments where I accidentally had hit pause on my laptop and did not know. Because I just thought it was another really long shot. And sometimes it took me about 2.5 minutes to realize that, oh wait, no, I think I did that.
Well, because a lot of this takes place without any music or anything behind.
Yeah, it's completely, it's just. It's just,
And
it really is fly on the wall. You're just as if you're sitting in the room just watching them.
And the few times that there are music, it's this. Oh. And when this music plays, no one is ever talking over it. I don't know if you guys noticed, but nobody ever talks over the music. The music only plays when we're just staring at people or staring at things. Yeah, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, it was in that it would not be for me. And I liked more of it than I expected. I expected to be just completely bored out of my mind the whole way. And there were moments where I was like, okay, I get this. I get where this is going. I do want to kind of watch where this is. As I was looking this up, Bellatar very much was against putting intermissions into this. Just fully believed you need to watch the full 7.5 hours from beginning to end. You don't get a reprieve, which I did not do. And maybe it would have improved for me. But I did find that there were moments I had to fall into it. I had to like lean into it, and it became kind of like this rhythm of watching where things going. And the moments where I got the biggest flashes of like insight and understanding were often the ones where I had been watching for a good 45 minutes where nothing had been happening and I'd been paying attention, and then all of a sudden I did find myself occasionally falling into that rhythm. And maybe I would have been able, if I had determined myself to set aside 7 hours and caffeinated myself up and gone in and watched this, maybe it would have settled into the rhythm more often for me. And so I'm glad to have seen it. There were moments of it that did stand out for me, that really did work for me. But this is definitely not this is not my style, and this is something that I agree. I don't think I would likely rewatch.
No. I mean, there were several moments for me where I wondered if I had gone to see this like in an art house cinema, if I would have resonated with it more than I did. But because I am at home, with the distractions that I have, of course, I don't know. Maybe I would have fallen asleep more. Who knows?
I'll comment. I liked this film quite a bit. I didn't realize going into this that I'd actually seen something by the director Bellatar several years ago, Workmeister Harmonies, back I think like when I was in college. And I don't remember being as crazy about it then. I think I watched it later on, and once I was like watching this film for like a couple minutes, I was like, wait, is this the same guy? Yeah, it was. Workmeister Harmonies is about 2 hours if memory serves, so a very different experience in regards to this particular film going in.
That's one of his shortest.
Yeah, well, I can believe it. Yeah, so I'm with you too. I would have liked to have potentially attempted to see this film in its entirety unbroken. Unfortunately, my life, I can't do that with my schedule as it's been. I would absolutely see this film again, unbroken, potentially in a theater if I had that chance. I know exactly where I would leave the theater to get snacks and then come back. But no, I did enjoy the film. I wasn't expecting to. All things considered, I am very ADHD, if you know me at all, and so that this is the kind of film that's very difficult for people like myself. But I think that's kind of, I guess, a testament to why I liked it so much, because yeah, those long unbroken shots, to me, they can be very mesmerizing. With mostly it's cinematography, mostly like the shot composition, how it's framed. To steal from you, Hannah, it did have a very Tarkovsky feel, with a lot of sound design that reminded me of like the samurai-esque Kurosawa films, with the wind and the rain, the nature taking such a background note to the backing of all these scenes. And yeah, it's one of those moments where it's almost just like an abstract piece of art, where if you look at it, you're just kind of relied upon to piece together your own train of thought as far as what's going on. It's not necessarily meaning like you're supposed to interpret something to mean one thing or another. It's just more so to kind of recognize how you're processing the scene, and that kind of makes it engaging. Like, for example, one of the scenes that stands out to me that I particularly liked a lot was one of the scenes where we see them dancing drunkenly in the bar as the little girl watches. And you sit there and you're watching it over her shoulder, and you're seeing these people dancing in very different manners and mannerisms and expressions of how they are, their levels of intoxication, how they vary. there's that one asshole that keeps like butting in and like try to break up couples dancing, but
Well,
just
and then there's the guy that walks across the bar constantly with a loaf of bread on his head,
Yep,
balancing
yep.
on his head. It's like,
And
what's that about?
and then the couple like eating both halves of it at the end. It's fascinating, but at the same time you can see, like, I've been in like some weird drunken like get-togethers in bars before where people do weird shit like that, not necessarily with bread, but the idea of like the fact that I'm like, all right, I'm watching this unbroken scene of people just dancing drunkenly in a bar, but I am fascinated by like what's actually happening. It has nothing to do with the story. It's not, we're not learning necessarily a whole lot about the characters themselves, but the fact that like almost like you feel like you're in that world. I mean, yeah, the fact that you're actually watching it through a little girl's eyes, it feels very true to that. Again, she's watching because she's fascinated. I was watching because I was fascinated, and it's not with every scene in the. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I actually saw that more, at least when we were seeing it through her eyes, as a communication not only of neglect, but of the view of mental illness at the time, because it's revealed that the girl was brought back from a I can't think of the term, but basically she was at a clinic being taken care of, and they brought her out and then gave her no supervision. So there's very little thought to, the fact that this girl is still sick. She still has issues, and these adults are just, ignoring her and getting drunk, and her mother doesn't even know where she is.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
saw that more of an indictment, um, than,
Well,
you know,
I don't
her
I
being
don't disagree,
fascinated.
but
But yeah,
I absolutely don't disagree with that assessment. But I mean in the case of, again, I think the framing of it being, the over the shoulder shot with that and her watching in, it's in an overall sense, yeah, you recognize that she is being neglected by these people, but at the same time, again, she is at this window staring at them, not necessarily like, she's not banging on the window trying to get their attention. She's just watching them.
yeah.
And I think the framing of that shot is more so to put us in that perspective. And again, when we shift the focus later on to another angle in that same bar, where we
Right.
cut in on some of the previous action, but just from a different perspective. And that's another thing I like about this film, the way that it does showcase different perspectives, because you had that opening scene with the guy, talking with basically what leads to him sneaking out of the house that he with the woman he just had the affair with, coming back to the door, and then you see the same thing from the doctor's perspective. But again, little things like that, how it shuffles around the perspectives of the film, and it's more so about not necessarily getting to know the community as individuals, but more so understanding the community from their walks of life.
Yeah.
And I think that was, I interpret that ultimately as being the point of the film, not necessarily in the way it was shot, but more so I think Bella would have wanted us to kind of get a sense of the community without getting too close to that lens. But yeah, like I said, I will say that this movie impressed me with how well it was paced, given the style of filmmaking that it had. I was, yeah, there were shots where I was like, where I was realizing that, yeah, this is going on for a bit. I'm getting a little bit bored, and then I look at my time clock. I'm like, whoa, an hour has passed by since I like last I mean,
I was surprised by how many times it got to the end of a segment and transitioned away. And I found myself being like, oh, actually, I guess I did want to see a little bit more of that. I wouldn't have expected that. But I would find myself being like, oh, that the 2.5 hours that we spent staring at this person turned out to be not everything that I wanted, which was surprising to me when that happened.
I agree. I think the first part, especially for me, went by the quickest. And again, I would argue maybe that had the least amount of action involved. I don't think I looked at the counter until the doctor started going about his routine at home. But after that, a lot of things had passed. I'm thinking, whoa, have we really had that much happen? But yeah, apparently, I think it was like an hour and a half, an hour and 45 in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the skinny and why I did enjoy this film, and I would like the chance to watch it again. Again, I know that there's a part that I will be skipping, but yeah, no, I'm glad I watched this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know it absolutely would not be Bellatar's intention here, but I feel like there's a 5-hour version of this that I could enjoy more. But I just I mean, you guys said you didn't notice the time a lot of times. I very rarely found those moments that I was feeling a lot of the time. And I mean, some of that was because I had other things that I needed to do. And, a lot of times, I get caught up in a film. So, it doesn't really, there's nothing, like I said, there were definitely moments that I enjoyed, and I mean, say what you want, and I know it's kind of like the easy, if you don't know what else to compliment about a film, you say it's shot very well, but the photography in this is beautiful. I mean, it's black and white, and it's absolutely like mesmerizing, but there were definitely there were moments that I would find myself getting caught up, and then there would be stillness for just a little too long, and then I'd be like, okay, how long? Oh, it's another hour. Okay. All right, let's okay.
Well, I will play the subjective card for me
know?
as well in this regard because like I said, I am ADHD, and those of you out there who also have ADHD can probably attest. When you find those things that you can pay attention to for a long unbroken amounts of time without getting distracted by something else, that is like sexy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also ADHD. I think ours works a little differently. Oh yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. But yeah. Okay, so we've kind of been moving around it. Do we want to talk about the disturbing scene?
Yeah, let's go into it because
We can't say should we talk about the disturbing scene and then not.
And then not.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So there is, like I said, there is a young girl in this that is obviously disturbed, is obviously neglected, is obviously not getting the care and attention that she requires. And there is a scene, and I was reading a little bit about this. I was trying not to read ahead, but it was helping me follow along with the story, reading the plot. And I
had to look at the plot for this section, so I understand.
I did that as well.
I had to ask why this was happening.
Exactly. I accidentally read this ahead, and yeah, I was like, I wonder how they're gonna do that. Yeah.
The Milo and Oda style.
Yeah, it's basically she tortures a cat and then forces it to eat poison. And it is very uncomfortable to watch. Because regardless of, I mean, I'm choosing to believe they didn't really kill a cat. If anybody knows differently, please don't tell me.
I've looked it up.
Huh?
I've looked it up.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to know. But either way, she is treating this real cat in a very uncomfortable manner, and you feel for the cat in every single moment, and it's very uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
And it's far too long.
I didn't look up the plot until the scene started happening, because I'm thinking, like, again, what is the explanation for this? Because I didn't get it at the time.
Yeah.
I also had to find out, again, I pressed pause and to see like what all happened with the events, because I had actually seen a film about last month called Come and See, and if you haven't seen that before, it's a fantastic war film. Hannah, you're shaking your head. Yeah,
I just watched that as well.
Oh, did you like it?
It was intense.
Yeah, it was.
Like is the wrong word for it, but it was good.
So there is an animal in that film they actually murder on screen, and like it's not fake. They actually do it, and so I'm thinking, okay, God, is this happening to me again? Why, like a month later, am I seeing this shit again? Yeah, I don't know how much we could want to go into detail about what she actually does with the animal, but the way that it is blocked and the way that it's shot, it's not deceptive. What she's doing to this cat on screen is actually, like, she's
doing it.
Yeah, slinging it around by the paws, like, and I've read in interviews from Bella, the director, that they it apparently was his cat. It was apparently not killed. He insists on that.
Mhm.
And he was also saying that they used stock footage of cat sounds over
Mhm.
what instead of actual on set Foley. Um, I uh, I still call bullshit. I guess to a degree. Again, even if that's your cat, whatever. Even if you had a veterinarian on site one filming, fuck you, Tar. Because look, here's the thing.
His cat should have been taken away from him. That's
Well, yeah, there's that. There are so many ways you could have conveyed that scene without having to very brutally show that cat being treated the way that it was. I don't care if you even said like, "Hey, the cat likes playing like this," which I don't know if they did or not, but the fact that they like shove it in a net and the cat looks scared as hell, that's not acting.
no.
It's not.
Cats don't act.
No. And you can't force its head into like a bowl of milk like that over and over again. Like there's not any trained animal out there, specifically cats, that are going to react that way from training. That's abuse. I'm sorry. I don't care what if you had a veterinarian, that veterinarian should lose their license. Fuck you, Tar. You made a film that's going to outlive me and be talked about long after I'm dead. But fuck you for making the sequence of this film.
Yeah.
If I ever see this film in theaters, I am absolutely going out and getting popcorn
Mhm.
and taking my time and hoping for a long line, because this part was incredibly upsetting to me.
It's
Again,
at least
Yeah.
5 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again,
It's the same long unbroken shot as everything else, and the subject matter is very upsetting to see.
and my problem with it in regards to the context too was troubling, because again, I looked it up like as far as like what was happening with the plot, and it says, and again, I guess spoilers for everyone listening out there who hasn't seen it, but it's because according to Wikipedia's plot synopsis at least, it's because she is realizing she's being abused by her and taken advantage of by her older brother,
Mhm.
and so she tries to put that cruelty that she's been receiving onto her cat. We don't realize that she doesn't realize she's been duped in the context of the film until after that point.
Trying to reclaim her power, but
Mhm.
Right, but unless the time, because this movie jumps from timelines a little bit back and forth. Are we to believe at this point that this was after she found out that she had been duped by the money tree? Because sequentially in the film, she finds out that she's been conned by her brother and
Yeah,
stolen the money.
I don't
after.
think that tracks.
It doesn't.
Sequentially, you're right. That doesn't make sense as an explanation.
I mean, I will say there are some moments with her parents before that where she's basically, pushed around and ignored, and I did get the sense that she's made to feel unloved before that happens.
Yeah, but not
I-
necessarily taken advantage of, not being manipulated and controlled, and I think that comes to a head with her brother. And so for her to do such a gratuitous scene like that
Mhm.
before the I don't know, the climax of her particular arc, it feels strange, and
I
fully
think a lot
shows
of
it.
that is supposed to be owing to the mental illness
Sure.
that which is not actually made explicit by that point. It's not really talked about until after, after she dies.
Well, yeah, but
but-
but someone who is not as mentally ill as her wouldn't torture a cat in response to that sort of thing. And again, I'm not saying that it's right for her to torture the cat not in either mental capacity,
No.
but for her to do that before we have a complete understanding of why she is doing this to an innocent animal. It again, like, looking past the fact that I have problems with her torturing a cat on screen the way that they do. There's so many ways they could have shot that carefully while still having the impact.
Yeah.
The fact that they just didn't do that after we have a little bit more understanding of her complete background. Like that's where I take problems with it beyond just my own bleeding heart for
Mhm.
cats.
Yeah.
So, and that's honestly like, so I put this movie at my number 2 slot, and this was the reason. It probably would have been my number 1, but again, if there's like a scene that's this important in the overall plot that stops me from being able to even watch it, I gotta dock the movie points.
Yeah,
For sure.
It's very unpleasant, and it really kind of taints the whole rest of the movie. Because even after that, you see her walking around with her now dead cat,
With the cat. Yeah.
which is unpleasant as well, even if you don't know how the cat died. But yeah, is there anything else that anybody wants to say about this movie before we move on?
Nah, I've said my piece.
Nope.
All right. Well, then we have another film that we will talk about a little bit later that was on the list that we compiled. But as part of this, I decided that it would be a fun idea for each one of us as hosts to contribute a film, something that either is important to us or something that we just think needs attention, or for whatever reason we decided to add to this list. So Hannah is actually going to go first with her pick, and she chose Muriel's Wedding.
Everyone said she didn't fit in.
You bring us down, Muriel. You embarrass us.
Everyone knew she wanted to get married.
No one's ever going to marry you. You've never even had a boyfriend.
But you'll never guess the secret
I'll show them all.
behind Muriel's Wedding. Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up.
You're terrible, Muriel.
As touching as it is funny. It's a date you want to keep.
I'm a new person.
Muriel's Wedding, rated R. Now playing.
All right, so that was that's Muriel's Wedding. It was an Australian film. We actually wasn't released in the US until 1995, but I wanted to include it, so we said, hey, it was released in Australia in '94. We're gonna count it in its home country. It was written and directed by P.J. Hogan, and stars Toni Collette, Rachel Griffiths, Jeannie Drynan, Sophie Lee, and Bill Hunter. This was for Toni Collette and Rachel Griffiths, one of their first big movies. This was maybe, I don't think it was Toni Collette's very first one, but it was her first big one, I think, her first starring role.
First lead, yeah.
Yeah. It's a not a romance, it's a comedy drama about this woman who feels very unloved. Nobody in her life cares about her. Her family does not like her. She ends up trying to go out and make something new of herself, often with bringing along the negative habits and toxicity that she's learned from her family and from the people around her, and having to try to figure out, can she actually be a different or a better person? I chose this one for a couple of reasons, partly because I wanted an opportunity to watch it again. It was one that I had seen for the first time a couple of years ago and thought, I think I really liked that. I want to rewatch that again sometime and find out for sure. But also because when we first made our list of, when we were looking at our list of movies from 1994 that were curated by the Academy and by critics, it was so low on female representation. There were no women in these stories, and I hadn't seen The Last Seduction yet, which was the one that was like about a woman. And so I was like, we need something. We need an extremely girly feminine story in here, just to balance out the rest of the Oscar nominees. And so I chose this one and rewatched it this week and just had so much fun with it. The first time I watched it, I remembered struggling a little bit with the tone. It bounces back and forth a little bit between these extremely quirky, very rom-com style tropes, although without an actual romance involved. There is a wedding, but not so much a romance. And then there are these moments of extremely dark, very deeply sad things happening to characters around her, and to her. And so the first time I watched it, I remembered having a little bit of trouble with that tonal shift and reconciling the two together. The second time around, it worked for me. I kind of knew that going in. I kind of knew the sense of it, and really ended up really fell in love with it again. I was really struck by how much it. I absolutely love Collette in this role. She's so good in this. Muriel is wonderful. She's not a likable person. She does terrible things, and not until the very, very end where we have a little bit of an abrupt shift where if you don't really see her like atone for the things she's done wrong. So it's just realize that she needs to make a change, and then we see the very beginnings of it. And I don't mind that. I didn't need to see her like suffer or anything. I needed to see her recognize that she was holding on to the same negative habits of, it doesn't matter if anybody is happy, I just need to look good to other people, and realizing that wasn't actually bringing her happiness on the inside the way that she thought it would, and it was actually making people around her still miserable. And that realization was important to me. It was really cool.
Sorry, I will say it is a moment of tragedy that causes her to come to this realization.
Yes.
And also realizing how shitty the people around her are reacting to this tragedy.
And recognizing that in herself, being like, oh shoot, I've been doing this. and I have made other people miserable just like this person was made miserable as well. And yeah, so I think it's really beautifully done. I think it does such an amazing job of it's even more so in 94, a little bit less so now, but in 94 especially, it was so rare to have a female lead who was genuinely awkward and uncomfortable and not in some way, shape, or form. And Muriel feels so real to me, with all her terrible flaws and all the things that she does horribly wrong, and all the moment. I absolutely love the moment where her date comes home with her, and she's so excited and so giddy that
she just keeps laughing,
just is giggling like crazy and wrong in the scene, and it just felt so real and so wonderful to me. And so I love it. I think it's very tonally different than everything that we've been watching, and I really appreciate that. And I think there's I really like how it kind of leads you through this character's life and her. I don't know. It's one that as I watch it, I was like, oh, I really like this now, and still don't quite have the words for it, which is not super great for defending it or talking about it on a podcast. But yeah, I really enjoy this still, and I figured we needed some of this flair in our list of 15 because it was lacking.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that the first time you watched it, you had an issue with the tone. I will say, as a person who did have quite a bit of an issue with the tone of you just said it, and now I can't remember the film we talked about on the last one, huh?
Last Seduction.
Yes, Last Seduction. I obviously had quite a bit of things to say about the back and forth tone in that. Honestly, I didn't have any issues with the tone because it was, I mean, you are right. There is kind of a shift back and forth between kind of silliness and, really dark stuff. But for me, the fact that it was focused on a protagonist that is simultaneously likable and unlikable at the same time, and also extremely immature. That tone shift kind of worked for me, because we are, like you said, there's such a shallowness to her that she doesn't realize at all. She is just chasing this facade and thinking that that's all she needs to be happy. And, ultimately, when she faces, real tragedy, realizes how empty those things are, because she achieves the facade and then realizes and even believes she's happy for a time.
That's so startling. That scene with the wedding was so like, that hit me this time, that she was just like complete. It was as if that was all she knew happiness was. It was just the facade. And she did not realize that, oh, hey, happiness can also have to do with underlying satisfaction and knowing that people are happy and knowing that you have made a difference to people. And she just did not register that having a beautiful wedding with a handsome groom and a bunch of beautiful bridesmaids was not what happiness meant.
Right.
And was just completely, I did not realize that at all, that she was missing anything. And it was just, that disconnect Intellect is wild.
time that she is claiming this facade of happiness that she thought she always wanted, she is losing the one true friend that she's ever had. And I know that Toni Collette gets, all the accolades for this, and I think she's great in this. Honestly, at the beginning of the movie, she was completely unrecognizable to me as Toni. Really, this is kind of the becoming of Toni Collette for me, because by the end, she is fully like, I recognize her as Toni Collette. But I also think that Rachel Griffiths as Rhonda does a really great job here as well. And it really is, she is literally the one true person, because even her family has been pushed so far into this facade that they can't even process what real care and emotion and love is. And Rachel Griffiths Rhonda is the one person that actually does accept her. But you talk about really what breaks her out of it is just kind of realizing the shittiness of the others around her. There was a moment after her mother committed suicide, when she is being told by her her dad's girlfriend that her death is now helping her father in his legal troubles. And when she says that, well, I think she'd be glad that her life finally amounted to something or something like that, I literally shouted at the television, "Fuck you." Like, and I honestly feel like that's the emotion that they wanted us to have in that moment.
Absolutely.
Because it is just, oh my, like, I knew you were shitty, but my God, to to whittle a person's whole being down to their whole point was to help a criminal, basically, as their last act. That's what you're gonna say their whole worth was. Fuck you. But yeah, I also really enjoyed this film. There was so much going on here, and we do really go on a journey with Muriel. And I really enjoyed the fact that, like I said, the first thing that we're introduced to is that basically she is that person that has a friend that is in the friend group that nobody likes. Which I automatically want to feel bad for her. And then the next thing, she's accused of stealing. She says she didn't do it. But pretty quickly after that, we realize, no, she just lies a lot.
Yes.
And this is not a thing that gets better for a very long time. And we just kind of have to decide, or we just kind of have to go on this journey with her and kind of, just like Rachel Griffiths at a certain point, kind of accept her until she is able to reach a point where she can get better. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. So Jack, I'm gonna let you talk. I know you have a different take on this.
Yeah, I'm the stick in the mud here. I didn't like this film very much. I don't disagree with your respective points. You make some good ones I hadn't honestly considered, to be fair. And maybe I watched this movie once, and so like Hannah, maybe this one is due a second watch for
me twice. So yeah. I don't know,
because I agree with the tonal inconsistency in the front of it. It honestly, in a sense, made me feel like the first time I watched the movie Heathers, where I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be taking this seriously, or if this was almost like a dream sequence-esque sort of feel it's supposed to be implying. I get the film was I get the film was wanting to showcase how she is still a product of her parents, her respective parents' issues, and then she was putting those on to other people. My issue with the film, I guess, largest, if not larger degree, is that all the things that happened to her, all those footnotes that happened to her in the course of the film, seem kind of ancillary to all those initial things that she was going in with. So basically, it's like to me, the film is saying, hey, her dad has this problem, her mom has this problem, her friends, quote unquote, are shitty to her. So these are the things that are established. So she's going to be doing that. This is why she is like she is to other people. But when something happens to her, like her bonding with her friend that she meets, I'm blanking on her name. This is the first film I watched for this viewing.
Rhonda, yeah.
Rhonda, thank you. I called her Discount Juliette Lewis. Apologies. I'm probably gonna get some torches and pitchforks for that.
I will say, unfortunately, Rachel Griffith's career after this was really just playing wives.
Which sucks because she was really good.
She was so good, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, but the part of the film that I enjoyed the most was probably their bonding at the resort and onward. That was, I think, the emotional heart for me when it came to this film in hindsight. However, my problem was that it was just too short-lived for those payoffs later on in the film to work for me. Her turning the cold shoulder to her later on, I felt like these two had a more longer friendship. That may have made more sense to me for her to be so jarring for her, but I don't think the film gives that friendship, that relationship of enough of a focus in the grand scheme of the entire plot for it to really resonate in the way that they wanted. Because with her having her diagnosis that she receives and whatnot, it's like after that point, Muriel is completely out of the picture, and I know that the film wants us to take that away. Like, yeah, she's being awful and she's being neglectful, but I don't think that, because they meet in the sequence of the film, they meet at the resort, they bond, they and then off screen they leave for Sydney, and you never get that living relationship with them until you cut to them just more comfortable in their environments. But then you're focusing on Muriel again, or excuse me, in this case Mariel, and her dating the guy. I mean, again, you have some cute moments where like she calls her from across the street to like check out the guy that's hitting on her, but beyond that, you don't get, at least from my perspective, I don't think you get enough of their actual settled relationship for those payoffs. And again, that I guess that may be the biggest issue in terms of specifics in the film is their relationship. But think like when the film showcases later on, like, hey, no, I bought you plane tickets back to Port Spit. I get that the film is saying like, hey, you're like your dad in this case now. You're just buying away the problems with money. But the fact that it's just that cold didn't read to me, because the film was trying to make it seem like there was something more to that. Other elements too. I honestly walked away with her feeling very unlikable up until, well, actually, I take that back. I started out feeling incredibly bad for her based on the way her fake friends were treating her, which was in part the tonal backlash for me, because then when she's, being a shitty person and kind, I'm like, am I supposed to be pitying her? Am I supposed to see what her friends or again, her fake friends are seeing? Like, yeah, they're very incredibly shallow and dismissive of her, but are we supposed to take some grain of salt from what they're telling her, or are we supposed to be condemning of her because we're at the time viewing it through Muriel's perspective?
I will say I kind of, and I'm gonna let you get back, but I kind of like the fact that we are presented with this person, because very often when we are presented with a person who is being picked on, they're just a source of pity. They're not really a person. I like the fact that we see that she's getting picked on, that's shitty, but she's also kind of a shitty person. Not that she deserves the treatment that they're getting from her, because it has no basis in who she actually is. It's all about her looks and stuff like that. But, she can still be a horrible person and not deserve the treatment that she's being given by these also horrible people.
And I think that's some of the story as well, is that like in her mind, it's a presentation issue. It's that they don't like me because they're seeing me wrong. And if I could go somewhere else and reinvent my image, I could fix it. Not realizing that if you're still being a crappy person, you're going to be a crappy person no matter where you go.
Well,
and so I think that is definitely a piece of it, is that she's seeing it as one way. And I think we're supposed to see both. We're supposed to be both like, yes, people are being gross to you, but you're not you need to get yourself together too, because otherwise you will find people like Rhonda who are genuine people who are willing to like you for non-shallow reasons, and you're going to treat them badly and they're going to be done.
And that's, I guess, where I kind of had some issues, because I don't disagree with that. For me though, I felt like with any protagonist, you need to have something for them to root. You need to have some reason to root for them, and I don't think the film gave us enough. Because yeah, you have the friends condemning her, and you have the pity sense, but then when you kind of go on later to show that she's not a very good person, that's all I really had to work with. I didn't have any reason, any investment for me in her journey from that point on. There really, circling back, my investment for that came in when Rhonda came in the picture, but it was more so because I liked Rhonda as a character a lot more than I liked her, and I think you're supposed to. But again, when Rhonda kind of steps back from the spotlight in the story again, you're just left with this person that you're not supposed to have a lot of respect for. That's and going on, getting into an engagement with a complete blank slate, and then all the other horrible things that happened to her. After Rhonda was out of the picture, I didn't have much to root for with an investment in the storyline and the character that we had left. I mean, yeah, she got, in a sense, what she wanted, and there's that great story beat that you try to shoot for as a writer, where like I think it was Dan Harmon's story circle, where he said, the character gets what they want, but it realizes that that's not what they wanted. How were his phrase? But I didn't get any kind of emotional payoff from Muriel's specific journey. It was more so from the people that supported it along the way, and I don't know if that was the intent.
I get that. I suspect that wasn't the intent. That definitely isn't how it hits for me. I do while Muriel is a horrible liar and a thief and does all kinds of terrible things throughout the course of this movie, there is a part of me that seeing her as the one who everybody else picks on wants her to break away from that. So it's less like that I see something that I just want to say, hey, you have an opportunity to look at this from the outside, from being on the outside, to look at this pattern of behavior and to break away from it rather than to dig down harder into it. And so she's set apart from me, from the others, for that reason. And so I root for her as the underdog for that reason.
Yeah, when I look at her, I see a person who,
because I'm like, you have an opportunity here, but happening doesn't work for you. And so I think that's what I felt the first time I watched it, that I didn't understand. I couldn't figure out how to root for her, or should I root for her even. And the second time around, it did gel a little bit with me. Which it might not have. That's why I wanted to watch it again, because I didn't know if it was going to hit me better. But I get that. I get not having much to support that journey for you.
I mean, I definitely, when I see her in the early parts of the film, see a person who could be better. And so that's why I'm willing to go on this journey. Definitely, I think the movie comes together at the end. There is a version of this movie that doesn't tackle the things that this one does, that doesn't confront the shittiness of what she is, ultimately what she thinks she should be. And obviously that's a much worse film. I found there, actually some interesting layers here. But yeah, it definitely comes together for me at the end. I definitely liked the film as a whole more the closer we got to the end, and for me that made the whole journey worth it. I actually think I would like the movie even more on a rewatch. But yeah, I mean, I do get what you're saying, and obviously we're different people, we connect in different ways.
That sounds like I need to do a rewatch at the end of the day.
I would be curious. I would be curious to see if it settled differently for you on a rewatch. And maybe it won't. That's totally fine. But I would be curious to see how it landed differently, or if it did.
You do have to wonder about the validity of a film that really only works if you watch it twice. I mean, I will say it worked for me the first time. But it's like, oh, this movie is great, you just have to watch it twice.
I mean, there's something to be said for that.
Watch it once?
I think there are definitely different purposes to films. Some are, and I think some do. This is the case with my probably favorite songwriter of all time, who is Jason Robert Brown, who I never like his songs the first time I hear them. But then I listen to them over and over, and they become like my favorite songs of all time. And so sometimes I think there's stuff that does, especially if it's got like a. Sometimes things are trying to throw you off the first time, or trying to catch you off guard a little bit. And once you let that happen, then you can dig a little bit and find something else. And I don't know if Muriel's Wedding is like one of those. It was for me, but
Yeah,
and I don't know that says anything bad about it. It's just a different way of processing it.
It's that diamond in the rough kind of thing, which, yeah, I mean, I will say, watching this, I did notice that Toni Collette has basically made a career on being really good at ugly crying, because that mouth open, gaping, just like draining cry that she
What's
does,
real?
it's
It really
very
is.
real, but she does it in at least the majority of the films I've seen her in. And it's always amazing. But to see it
she's
in
not
this
afraid to go there.
really kind of codified that for me. I'm like, she does that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's not a criticism. I'm like I said,
It's
good
one of her
at it.
strengths.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tool in her toolbox. And to see that she was utilizing it this early on, I'm like, okay, bravo.
Mhm.
But yeah. All right. Is there anything else that we want to say about this film before we move on to the next one?
Soundtrack by ABBA.
Yeah.
Soundtrack by ABBA. They've made a pair. I have not seen this, but there's a stage musical version of this in which it mixes ABBA songs with original songs. And apparently, from what I could see on Wikipedia, it looks like the ABBA songs are sung by actors portraying ABBA who come out and sing with her, which sounds amazing. And I really want to see this.
That sounds absolutely amazing.
It sounds delightful.
I'm not the biggest ABBA fan in the world, but I like this a lot. But I like this jukebox musical version a lot better than I liked Mamma Mia. So
Yeah, this is better than Mamma Mia, better use of ABBA songs.
Well, tonally, it just fit more for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So in our picks, I'm gonna go next. And my choice to add to this list was Heavenly Creatures.
They were two young girls living in a world of imagination.
I'm going to the fourth world. It's an absolute paradise of music, art, and pure enjoyment.
What they had was friendship.
What a disgrace you are! Your mother is rather a miserable woman.
What they needed was freedom.
Do you like your mother?
No.
What they shared was a secret.
Your daughter's been behaving in a rather disturbed manner.
What's she done? I think I'm going crazy. I'm sure it's perfectly innocent.
The crime that shocked the nation.
People die every day. Only the best people fight against all obstacles in pursuit of happiness. All thought it up. Aren't you clever? We're not going to be separated. She's uncontrollable.
Based on a true story.
It's all frightfully romantic.
Heavenly Creatures.
I will say I'm not the biggest fan of that trailer.
Did the guy who cut Red do that?
Right?
I think it was also Don LaFontaine's voice.
Yeah, I think they were both Miramax, so very, very likely. But yeah, it definitely gives you kind of the wrong idea of at least the way the film is going to portray itself. It's an odd, it's honestly, if you ask me, it's too commercial. It's too commercial of a way to present this very indie film. But getting into this film, This is Heavenly Creatures, 1994 New Zealand biographical psychological drama film directed by Peter Jackson. And it is starring, this was actually the breakout role for Kate Winslet. Also stars Melanie Linsky and a few others. I knew Clive Marison going into this. But basically, it is the true story of two girls that committed murder. They actually killed one of the girls' mothers. And this is, you talk about an odd tone. This film seems like a fantasy film about two murderers. Is really how it feels at times. But I don't know. There is just something so interesting about the way that this film frames all of its characters, its subjects, their victim, their, the people surrounding them. There is such a clash between what is thought of someone and then what is the actual reality. And I feel like the film actually plays with both of those tones very well. Because like I said, the film follows the two real life girls, Juliet Hume and Pauline Parker, who basically became friends in the early 50s, New Zealand, and really had a very tight bond. Apparently, one of the real life people has disputed that there was anything sexual going on, but this type of obsessive behavior doesn't really exist between people that are just very good friends. So, I mean, you can take it how you want to, but there's definitely some connotations in there. Definitely some beliefs, at least by the parents, that this is, as they would put it, an inappropriate relationship, which of course is bullshit. But there is obviously some very strong immaturity issues coming from both of them. There's some emotional issues, some mental illness, I would venture to say, as well. And then, like I said, I think this film does a very interesting job with all of the characters involved, because obviously you have the protagonists who are murderers. But it never tries to just paint them as horrible, murderous people. We kind of see this descent, and while we don't agree with the the ultimate act, I can kind of see, you know, where some, especially playing with teenage angst, this kind of feeling of desperation came from. And also similarly, the mother, although she is, homophobic and, all of these things, is also painted in a very sympathetic way. And so watching this film, because it is bookended like this, we are seeing scenes because these two girls create a fantasy world, and we are seeing their fantasy world coming to life. And so there are some very whimsical, fantastical things happening in this film, but the film itself is bookended by a real life murder. It starts and ends with the murder. The beginning starts with the aftermath, and it ends with the actual act. And it is I mean, obviously it's not as bad as, really torturing a cat, but in a dramatic sense, it's disturbing. It's tough to watch this last scene. And I really liked this movie. I felt I kind of loved the kind of mix between because these are young, creative, imaginative teenage girls who did a horrible thing. And so it is giving service to both of those tones, and I think marries them very well. But I'm going to let someone else speak. What do you guys think about this?
I went into this movie pretty much blind. I didn't know of the events it was focusing on. I didn't know it was based on a true story. Honestly, the premise that I had been given going into this was two girls bond and have a friendship that's a little too close for comfort.
Yeah.
That's what was proposed to me.
Me neither. I will say, sorry, not to cut you off, Jack,
No,
but
you're good.
I didn't say, I hadn't actually seen this movie going in. The only reason I added it to the list was because I have heard of the film. I knew that it was kind of a big one for Peter Jackson at the time. This was obviously pre-Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson, when he was making only indie films, and I'd always wanted to see it, so that's why I put it on the list. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I also didn't know that this was a Peter Jackson film going in too, which was a nice surprise, because I was thinking like I had always just kind of had in my head that he just did horror related stuff, and I guess you can argue that there's some elements of that in this, but I mean it's a lot more of like an artsier indie type of film in a sense. It honestly felt like as a whole, like Bridge to Terabithia told by Terry Gilliam, because the whole fantastical elements reminded me a lot of his films in particular. And that's not a slight. It's the influence from Gilliam that you can. I'm absolutely certain that there's some influence with there, but I know I enjoyed the film a lot. I did not know this was a breakout role for Kate Winslet as well, which was nice. I don't think I'd seen her in anything that young before. I think Titanic was the earliest in her career that I'd started following. Maybe A Kid in King Arthur's Court, whichever came out first. Probably that one.
I think Kid in King Arthur's Court was 96 and Titanic was 97. This was
94,
so
yeah,
a few years before.
King Arthur's, it was either 95 or 96, but yeah, so I guess afterward. But yeah, no, really enjoyed the film. I like the idea of them portray, because you've seen a lot of films where it's like, hey, we're going to be tackling the perspective of the killers, but there's so many cliches you associate with it now, especially with all the movies we've had since 94 to look back on, where it's, oh, look, it's them being like tortured by people. It's not their fault. They're being like, they're being abused by their stepdad.
Right.
They look at animals and dissect them in their basement and shit like that. And yeah, it's nice to see the fantasy element be such an escape and a positively portrayed one in a sense for these two girls, because you look at it, it's almost like the Jennifer Connelly character from Labyrinth, like how she fantasizes, but it's just more visually represented for the audience in this sense, and then how that spirals into madness, but not in a way that it's, again, very heavy-handed. It's not, it does have moments where they're interacting with some of these characters a little bit differently than they first started, but ultimately the fantasies themselves don't change. It's just how they respond to the fantasies, which is, again, that was a great portrayal to me. I love the special effects involved with this too. It's there's obviously a ton of CGI, but it's not the kind where it just looks like gross and like it's aged poorly. It's not incredible, but again, that's something that Jackson's very good at doing. He's very good at utilizing CGI in the way that needs to be done, and as opposed to going over the top with it. Not much more to say about it right now. I guess further discussion. This is the last one I watched. I literally finished it this morning, so it's still pretty fresh.
Sure.
But I also love their little slight at Orson Welles that made me laugh. But yeah, beyond that, I'm done rambling for now. I'll let you guys go at it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this was actually the first film appearance of both Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky, both of them. And while I get kind of the attention that Kate Winslet got, Melanie Linsky, I think, deserves just as much, if not more, because she's really doing the
Absolutely.
heavy lifting here. And to be honest, Melanie Linsky is a face I have known for a very long time, but I did not know the name. So this is actually one of the first times that I've put the face to the name and known who she was in a film. I also did not know that she was a New Zealand actress. I think I've always ever seen her doing either a British accent or an American accent. So I think I just assumed she was American. But yeah, I think they're both great in this film.
Yeah, this was a rewatch for me. I rewatched this and Muriel's Wedding almost back to back yesterday, and it was such an interesting set of movies about female friendship.
It is very, because they're kind of similar, because they're both real about immature young women who think they want something that they really don't know the repercussions of.
And
But
both of them,
how, oh god, sorry.
both of them are like one genre hiding behind another. So we have this tragedy hiding behind a rom-com, and we have hiding behind a fantasy in both of these scenarios. So they are kind of an interesting little double feature, the two of them together.
They have such different backgrounds, but it's very fascinating, like how well they mesh together when they get together. Because you know, at first it almost presents Kate Winslet's character like a almost like a manic pixie dream girl type, but again, that quickly dissipates.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Hannah.
No, I remembered really liking this when I had watched it before, and it's captivating the way that it uses I did not remember that it used so much of actual fantasy elements in the story, and it does a beautiful job. I love the comparison to Bridge to Terabithia or something, but if it was a horror story, but if it was dark, but if it was upsetting, because that's very much, and I love how it leans so much into just so much of this is easy to it's hard to tell where the line is between madness and just the intensity of 14, 15-year-old girls, like, who just have all these feelings because teenagers have all these feelings, and have one other person who feeds into them that same amount of feeling. And it's difficult to tell, like, where that crosses a line into something that could lead to a murder, and where it's just, because I'm sure there are things that I have been that passionate about as a teenager, and obviously did not murder anybody about it. But so it's I love the showing that build and showing how so much this feels just like very, very intense, very extreme teenage angst and excitement and passion and joy, and then realizing along as it goes on that this isn't healthy. This is too much. Something is too much here. Something is something is controlling them and controlling them in a way that it should maybe not be, and making them unable to cope outside of it. And so I think the fantasy elements of this are fantastic. I agree with you. I think Melanie Linsky does so much of the heavy lifting here, and Kate Winslet is great. Kate Winslet is always great. Like, no shade to her at all on this. But Melanie Linsky, it is so sad to me that she did not take off in the same way.
Well, I will say, I think Melanie Linsky has the career that she wants.
Yes, she's
doing a lot of indie stuff.
Agreed.
And she could be doing more, but I think it's exactly where she wants to be.
And I think that's fair. I just wish more people knew her name as well and like watched her stuff. Like this was, I think, the first thing that definitely the first thing I noticed her in. And ever since then, every time she shows up, I'm like, oh, I get excited to watch whatever she's in, because she was so phenomenal in this one. I really this was again a really weird double feature with Muriel's Wedding, but surprisingly apt. I this made me do all the digging into the story afterwards. And the Juliet grew up to be a novelist and changed her name and has
in fact, so a lot of people didn't know she was the same person
until right around this
94.
When she was like, hey, this was about me, which would be intense to see yourself portrayed that way. But yeah, I think it's just, it's such a, it's paced so well in how it brings us to where it goes. And it's so easy to do this in a way that sensationalizes the characters, or like you were talking about, has, you know, oh, and they were, you know, dissecting animals in their basements and there was always something wrong with them. And this isn't that. This is this just something growing to an intensity that is not healthy, that is making it difficult for them to cope outside of the world that they've built. And that slow build to it is fascinating and terrifying and beautifully acted, and beautifully paced and scripted and directed. It's all done so well with
Oh,
this.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I love that the fantasy elements are here, because without them, I think this would be like 500 other movies that I've seen telling, you know, the sad story about, you know, a person that, you know, did a horrible thing, you know. But the elements and the thing that this really drives home to me, and honestly, this is really one of the first of his indie films that I've seen, but I, even without having seen more, I miss this version of Peter Jackson. This version of Peter Jackson, I mean, he made this movie for $5 million. I mean, made about the same amount of money back, maybe a little bit more, but sure, it wasn't hugely commercially successful. But you look at this, and this is a director bursting with ideas, and I
fun
look,
and fun.
yes,
Fun, yeah.
and while I do love the Lord of the Rings films, and you know, there's just something about this that I think Peter Jackson is a director that needs to work on a small budget, because it's not just the fantastical elements. It's not just the clay characters that we're seeing come to life. The interesting camera work that's being done here is so creative. And it is something that makes this movie live and stand out above, you know, the other biographical crime dramas. It makes this movie worth watching. And yeah, I just tip my hat to this version of Peter Jackson and wish there was a way for him to come back, because I would love to see more of these. I know he tried to do it with The Lovely Bones, which I've only seen once and remember, like, you know, thinking it was okay,
It's
but I
better
wasn't
with a
blown
rewatch,
away.
but I agree.
Sure, I wasn't blown away by it the way I was this.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think I would like to see him return to form a little bit. I will say, one of my critiques with this particular film was I did have a lot of issues with the pacing, which is interesting because this is probably the shortest Peter Jackson film I've seen.
Sure.
It's like the longer his films got, the better he got at pacing for me. But that being said, yeah, I do agree. The mischievous fun that can be kind of taken from a lot of his earlier pictures is something that's missed in Hollywood as a whole. You know, his longer, more bombastic films he's more known for now are great. At least I know that they're generally in good hands, except for The Hobbit. But
And if there was ever one that could benefit from mischievous fun, The Hobbit would have been it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like I wanted that.
Yeah, honestly, if he could have done a Hobbit like on this scale, can you imagine how fun that would have been?
Yeah, like an hour and 45-minute Hobbit. I'd see
Yeah.
that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all we needed.
Yeah. But hey, don't worry, you have the extended versions out now. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. I don't know if I'm going to be going out of my way for a rewatch. I think I pretty much got everything I needed to from the initial viewing, which I guess is a testament in a sense. But yeah, I enjoyed lots of it. I did find this interesting that this is the second film of the 15 we've watched featuring a Orson Welles
Orson Welles.
Yeah. Someone impersonating Orson Welles was that's
true.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah, I will say also, well, actually it doesn't matter at the moment. But does anybody have anything else that they would like to say about this film before we move on?
No.
All right. Then next up, and I'm very curious to hear about this, but Jack chose to add to our list as his selection the 1994 film North.
This is North, the world's most perfect kid.
North always looks both ways.
North never spoils his appetite.
North flosses.
Everybody appreciated him except his own parents. So he set off to find the perfect parents.
Howdy, North! Here you go, North.
Hello, North.
Where's our son?
North?
North. North.
North!
North, a new comedy from Rob Reiner, rated PG.
So yeah, this is North. So the plot in a nutshell is a little boy gets frustrated at his parents and decides to divorce them, and he goes on a whimsical quest of sorts to replace them. The film is directed by Rob Reiner. It stars Elijah. It has a pretty big cast. Check this out. It's got Elijah Wood, Jason Alexander, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Mark Shaman, Jussie Smollett, Taylor Fry, Alana Austin, Peg Shirley, Chuck Cooper, Alan Zweibel, Donovan Dietz, Teddy Bergman, Jordan Cornell, Bruce Willis, Glenn Walker Harris Jr., Kim Delgado, John Lovitz, Mitchell Group, Glenn Kubota, Matthew Arkin, Mark Coppola. So we even have the Coppolas in there. Alan Arkin, Alan Richins, excuse me. Lola, I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name. Helen Hanft. I don't know how you pronounce that. Hanft. Dan Aykroyd, Reba McEntire, Brian Anthony, Carmit Bashar, James Harkness, and Sebastian Lacaze as Texas Dancer.
Yes, those are all of the important cast members.
I have a couple more if you want, but
you just made me do a deep dive because I was like, Mark Shaman was in this movie.
Oh shit, I forgot some people. I'm sorry. We got John Ritter, Scarlett Johansson, Wendell Josepher. This IMDb has no order of importance with this cast. It's just lists people, and so I'm like, what? Who's next? Nick Taylor as Newsman.
Did you say Alan Arkin and
yeah, he's in there. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like it was interesting seeing Scarlett Johansson show up in this.
Yeah,
yeah.
Again, similar to Kate Winslet, I think this is the youngest thing I'd ever seen her in because before that was like Home Alone 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie is absolutely bonkers. The fact that it exists is kind of amazing in and of itself. The fact that it exists and it came out at the time that it did is amazing in and of itself. Because this is Rob Reiner at pretty much the top of his game as far as the directing goes. With some people who are also the top of their careers as far as their acting. I mean, Kathy Bates is in this, and she won the Oscar for a Rob Reiner film like what 3-4 years before.
Yeah, and now she's in this film in brownface.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that, but I mean, you could argue that Kathy Bates has done worse stuff with her career in recent years, or at least more forgettable. Yeah, this movie is bonkers. I picked it for a lot of reasons. One, because fuck you, but also because this movie is very important in the year 1994. Acclaimed Siskel and Ebert had a very successful show going on at this time, and in that show and in his review, I almost said Rob Reiner again. Roger Ebert pinned what is commonly associated with his most famous or infamous review of a film ever. Have you two read this before? Have you heard it?
I think I have.
Oh, it's worth watching. It's worth going out of your way on YouTube just to hear him speak it. But I'll go ahead and read it verbatim. Give me one quick second.
I can probably put it up on YouTube
if you want. It's like just Roger Ebert on the movie North. Well, actually, don't do that because he actually elaborates a little bit in the movie. I don't know if we want to get into that just yet. Let me find the exact quote.
Yeah, it's fine.
This was everything I knew about the movie going in.
Oh yeah, no, that's the reason I watched
it.
Every time I pitch this movie to somebody, I will basically read this quote out and like, here's why you need to watch it.
It's one of the first 5 things when you type in Roger Ebert.
Yeah. So yeah, this is arguably his most famous review for anything he ever penned. He even has a book named after a section of this review. Okay, here we go. Um, 1 second. Oh Lord, it's just, and that's also part of the fun. This is my second or third time watching this film, and and it's so fun to watch it just thinking about him in a theater, probably by himself, just getting angrier and angrier as the film proceeds. But here we go. I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it. He wrote this. He published that word for word. And then again, spoke it on his show. It's amazing. Again, I say this movie. Are you gonna play it?
No, just look at the face Siskel is making in this clip. It's great. I'm sorry. I know this is a podcast. Nobody can see this, but if you look up the clip, the still image is Siskel making this horrible, like, just yeah, it's real bad face. Like, it's
and they did call this the worst movie of that year for them, which is great to me. They both agreed. Yeah, so the movie is bad. I mean, there's no question about it. It's not a good movie. It wasn't successful, but it's that kind of awesome bad that I enjoy watching, and a lot of people enjoy watching, where they're not trying to be bad. They're not self-aware that they're a bad movie, like one of the parody epic movies and whatnot. It's a movie that genuinely tried to be entertaining and tried to appeal for people and had effort put into it. It just did it in all the wrong areas and made all the wrong choices in the process. The movie is bonkers. Again, every time I've rewatched it, I'm just thinking like, oh my God, what the fuck is going to happen next? I cannot believe they just did this. Oh my God, this character said that. I'm laughing my ass off. Again, a lot of it's tasteless and and really in poor taste.
Yeah.
But just the shock and the sheer audacity that even exists in a movie, let alone one that came out within the past 30 years, is incredible to me. I mean, we can get into a little bit more as we talk, but that's my opening thoughts on the film. Did you two like it?
Okay, so I watched this movie yesterday, and I will say when I was first given the list, I looked everything up to see what was available on streaming, what would I have to, get in, and this North was on HBO Max.
What?
Yeah.
It was?
But it left HBO Max the first day of October. October 2nd. So I had to pay for this movie.
You dumb bastard.
In the words of the paperboy from Better Off Dead, I want my $2. No, I'm kidding. It was $4.
No, okay. So I've known about this movie for a while, like I said, and I watched it for the first time on YouTube. This was like 10 years ago, and that same copy is still on YouTube. It's a shitty transfer. It's like in 10 parts, but the best part about it is that the username for the guy who posted it is Quick Get His Pants.
Yeah. I will
Which, if
say,
you don't know, for those of you, I'm sure the very few of you out there who've not seen North, there's a scene in the beginning where North has a panic attack and his parents cower over him, and his dad's line is "Quick, get his pants or unbuckle his pants,"
which has some real creepy vibes to it. I don't care if you do know that the guy inspects pants. That's just real creepy. Okay, so I watched this movie yesterday, and it was so odd because there are moments where they are doing things like quick wordplay, and I'm leaving out the word witty because it's not. And it's being done by Alan Arkin, and I'm watching this saying, I feel like this is supposed to be funny. I feel like I should be laughing at this, but I'm not. And I kept getting the sense, have you ever seen somebody tell a joke that you know is funny, but they are just telling it in the worst way. That is what watching this movie is like. It is like watching something that it's like, I feel like there's something here, but they're just not hitting it. And I told Hannah before this started, this movie is swinging for the rafters. It is so weird, but in the most boring way possible. And I don't get how that happens. How can you be so weird and over the top and just not hit it at all? And I mean, I get what you're saying. In a way, it is entertainingly bad, but it also, to me, it's like I am watching someone getting so close to the target and just whiffing it every single time. And it's more frustrating than anything. Yeah, I'm just, this film for me is an exercise in the absolute wrong way. But like you said, this is filled with funny, talented people. I mean, this is Elijah Wood at his peak of kid stardom.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, wait, hold on. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, no, he was a huge child star, and this is like right in the middle of that. He's like 12 when this movie is made, and it is just not hitting any. Like I said, there are a lot of really interesting ideas here. I mean, the idea of Dan Aykroyd and Reba McEntire as a married couple is bizarre enough. It's like, how do you mess that up?
And then throw in a musical number on top of that.
Yes. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Jason Alexander also playing a married couple. I feel like this should work, and it doesn't in any way. It's the fact that this movie gives me John Ritter. I love John Ritter. I miss John Ritter every time I see him in a movie. And
he's great in this.
Did nothing with John Ritter. I mean, he wasn't bad. He was fine. And I'm like, John Ritter is so much better than fine. Yeah.
You paid for North.
I had to. I tried to torrent it and it wouldn't torrent.
It's on YouTube.
I didn't know that.
I have to agree in that there's a sense in which I'm not usually one for so bad they're good movies, and there's a sense in which this one is extra frustrating because it's like I like watching when those do hit for me. It's because the chasm between what people wanted and what they did is so wide that it's funny to be like, it's funny that you think this was ever going to reach here, but here you can almost see it. They're so close so much of the time, and by being so close they go like way off in the wrong direction. Like it really highlights how wrong it is that they came so close in a lot of these. I did have one genuine laugh at an actual joke, which was nice. It's the one where like it's the third or fourth time that Elijah Wood meets Bruce Willis as a different character, and he goes, "Hey, it's you," and he goes, "No, it's not," and I genuinely laughed. I was like, "Okay, that's funny." It's like this casual, nope, not. It's not me.
Laugh out loud. Line. This was the Hawaiian alphabet line. We don't have B, C, D, or F, so you're guaranteed to get straight A's. I thought that was funny. Everything else, though.
No, you didn't like the defense thrusts. It's okay. I didn't.
Like it was so obvious that
I was so mad.
Yeah, I was like, that was so obvious. You didn't need to tell that joke.
There are so many pieces of this that almost like it's so close. That's the thing that I like, and something being so close to being good and being completely, and making, again, I agree, completely the wrong decision at every single step of the way, except for that one joke I laughed at. The wrong decision every single step of the way, when surely some of those just like statistically should have been the right decisions. And since they were so close, could they not go one step further and make the right one for this particular joke, this particular character? And so there's something like it's definitely a fascinating watch in that it really is like, how do people make consistently such a bad decision moment after moment after moment, and yet you still kind of know what they're trying to go for, and knowing what that goal is supposed to be made it a very frustrating watch, being like, oh my gosh, you just need to take like 2 steps this way and you'd be fine. So yeah, it was definitely not it was obviously not a good movie. I both liked and hated that I could see where it was going. There were moments where I was like, "Oh, I could see what it was trying to do."
Did you really predict that someone was going to shoot him in the end of the movie?
No, I did not. But when those things would happen, I'd be like, okay, I think I see where what they're trying to bring out of this, the tone they're trying to go for and failing miserably at. I could see the embers of the quirky, comedic, family, heartwarming vibe they were trying to send off that then got buried in complete nonsense. So yeah, it was one that I definitely should have seen, if only to have seen it after that notorious Ebert review. If I'm gonna watch 100 movies from 1994, this should be one of them. And it is astonishing. The part where I was like, oh, you could have done so much with this, was I really, all the stuff about him seeking to find his family was, I don't know that could have been made anything I was going to want to watch. That was a pretty terrible idea. But all the stuff with this child revolution and underground and spy ring who are taking over the world, I was like, I would almost watch that full movie.
That stuff felt like an episode of Pete and Pete to me. I was like, and I loved Pete and Pete.
That was probably the closest of all of them where I was like, I could see that almost working.
Yeah, like I was like, okay, we're getting into a weird, quirky thing. What are we gonna do with it? Not really anything.
I actually okay, so I dunked on Muriel's wedding, so I've got to dunk on this.
Especially since you ranked this above Muriel's wedding.
I did. And it's, again, I was just more entertained by this, and just I was more looking forward to certain moments. I was, again, a lot of it was shock, like, oh my god, yeah, the only part of this island that isn't bountiful or fruitful is, unfortunately, Mrs. Ho. When he reveals that his wife is,
I was like, oh my god, I can't believe he just said that.
But no, I'm with you. I'm kind of with you in this, and I think the film, just like looking past just the cringe factor of it all, it does seem at odds with its A plot and its B plot. They seem very distinct from one another, to the point where I strongly suspect that they had the A plot in mind for the screenplay, but they wanted to add on more time, because if you take out, like, in the screenplay, everything involving that, like, friend of his from school who arranges this whole thing, you take out all of that, the movie basically doesn't change.
Yeah.
I mean, or rather doesn't have to. I mean, the whole gun thing at the end was completely tacked on. It was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
I won't necessarily say that I am quite as big a fan. I think there's potential with the children's revolution thing. I just don't think there was enough given to it to explore.
I agree. I agree. Nothing in this movie got what it should have gotten.
Yeah. No, not at all. And I think,
like I said, I could see that have been a plot in an episode of Pete and Pete.
Right.
But
there was a kernel there of something good.
And I think the biggest flaw with the A plot, for me at least, again, looking past the bad comedy, is you don't get any understanding of, like, what makes him want to go back to his family.
Can I ask, is the movie trying to be on his side or his parents' side, or both?
Yes.
Because I could not tell
yes
whether.
And no.
Okay. I was like, I genuinely am not sure whether they're trying to say parents should appreciate their perfect children more, or kids should be thankful that they have their imperfect parents. And I was like, I think maybe it's doing both, but it's doing neither well.
Well, it would help if we just saw
this bonkers ass thing. We find out that the whole thing was just a dream he was having in a freaking chair. But we'd already gone off the rails before that. So this world is already ludicrous anyway. I don't see why this couldn't have been why it had to be a dream.
Arguably, the whole "it's a dream" thing is even more bonkers because it implies that like a mall locked up and just like had like left like a kid sitting out in the middle of like not hiding. It wasn't even like a secret spot. Like he was in the middle of a department store and they're like, "Hey, this looks fine. Let's go ahead and close.
Let's go home.
Let's lock up."
I want to watch the movie about that mall employee who got fired for letting the child stay in the mall over there.
Right.
That's family creatures.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I couldn't tell if it was trying to like be a lesson more towards the parents or the child or both. But again, the movie completely failed when it comes to giving us any kind of motivation why North would want to be back with his family, because his only time you ever see them interacting is when they're like arguing in front of him. You don't know the movie keeps hitting you over the head with like how envied this child is by everyone in the community, like how well off he's doing, how successful he is, but you don't understand like how he got to that point based on the parenting that he has, because they seem to give him complete neglect. So it's like, is he just a self-motivational prodigy? I don't know. But again, like when he's getting that moment of conflict where he's like, "Hey, I miss my family," you're just thinking, why? And I'm not saying the bones of that couldn't be there, but the film couldn't be bothered to place that. So it's just
I was about to say, we never see a time when they were good, a time when things were good with them. Like there's no motivation to that.
Or even just like have like a scene where they do something for him that he doesn't perceive because he's still in that moment. So like after the quick loosen his pants scene, like have them like tucking him into bed when he's still like visibly shaken, but not realizing like, hey, they're taking care of you.
Yeah, or have the whole fact that they're completely neglecting him be more in his head as it actually would be for a child. Have us see both sides. But no,
because the last family he meets, it's supposed to be like the ideal family that he's in his mind has been looking for. But
I don't know about you, but they scared me the most.
they were very. Yeah. But
and then he still misses his family for unknown reasons.
You need to root for his family more than them. Like they are much kinder to him than anybody else has been. They haven't been utilizing him or trying to exploit him. But you need to sense like why. You need to understand why he would want to leave them. Just being other than like, hey, no, these are my default biological parents. Like that's not a good message to send kids. Sometimes kids are in shitty situations at home where they need to be with different families, and it's unfortunate that this movie, I mean, no one's going to watch it anymore. No one's going to learn from this movie, but the fact that like that's not being explored, it's like, no, you need to learn to recognize when there are red flags with your upbringing.
That's the thing, is that like whether it's trying to say parents appreciate your children or children appreciate your parents, it gives no motivation for any of that to happen at any point.
Right.
and it's just like it's very generic and strange and clearly trying to say something but has no idea what that is and therefore cannot say it.
And for all the kids listening to this podcast right now, let me tell you, if your dad ever says to you, "Quick, loosen his pants," you probably should find a different parent.
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, I kind of zoned out, but I don't know. Did you mention the fact that this is based on a children's book? And
I can believe it.
The first draft of the screenplay was actually written by the author. The book is called North, the tale of a 9-year-old boy who becomes a free agent and travels the world in search of the perfect parents.
Yep. And you know what? I would bet my third testicle that like there's nothing mentioned like of his friendship with that kid who starts the kid revolution in that book. That was probably
that's its own thing.
Yeah. Well, does anybody have anything to add before we...
Do we want to talk about like the Kathy Bates scene?
Oh God.
Because we touched on it, but
the entire The entire gamut
thing
of,
is so
let us
insulting.
go to the stereotypes of the world.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, he goes to Africa.
He goes to Africa. He goes to the Amish. He goes.
The African one was really bad.
Yeah.
It's all. Yeah.
It was doing the National Geographic thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Inuit one was insulting. It's all. I mean,
at least they got like a black actor for the African thing, but Lord, like they.
yeah,
like,
I mean, they got Graham Greene to play the dad. At least he's at least Native American.
Yeah, but like, why get cat? Like, did just all the
And then
prominent
Kathy
Native
Bates
American?
and Abe Vigoda in brown face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they still got work after that. Like how, like Kathy Bates, like has been nominated for Oscars since then, if I'm not mistaken.
And his problem with that family is that their cultural traits are barbaric to him, and that they kill their elderly like that. And he's like, and it's like, this is a huge problem.
Which even that is inconsistent because like you have that scene where like the one guy gets on there and he has like the easy. So they send all their elderly off on like an ice float to just die, but one of them has like an office chair, a table, a TV set up, and then when Abe Vigoda comes up, it's like no, it's just like a chair, or like I don't even know if it's that. It's very minimalist. I'm like,
yeah, he has a stool.
Yeah,
the
it's
guy
a stool.
before
Not
him
even a
has
chair.
an easy chair and a television.
He doesn't even
got
get his
a
lumbar
stool.
support. Yeah.
Gosh.
Okay, I just have two last words to say about this film. You guys can keep talking if you want, but this is all I'm gonna say. My crack.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that
His most private of cracks, or whatever he says, crevices.
yeah, yes, something like that.
Yeah, this movie was an absolute and utter mistake, but I'm glad that it exists.
That's
Thank you
fair.
so much for sharing this with us, Jack.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks, Ebert. Somewhere up there, he's like going, "You're welcome."
Oh.
Okay, you can cut that.
All right. Are we ready to move on?
I am ready to not be talking about North anymore. I've said all that I need to say.
Oh, geez. Okay. Then we are going to talk about today's final film. This film doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, but I'm going to give a little bit. This is 1994's The Lion King.
From Walt Disney Pictures, he was the heir to a vast empire.
This'll all be mine?
Everything the light touches.
Until a treacherous plot cost him the throne.
I will be king.
But while his life may have changed, his destiny could never be denied.
You are the one true king.
I'm going back.
Simba!
In the great tradition of Disney adventure comes The Lion King. Rated G. Exclusive engagements now playing. Starts June 24th everywhere.
And no, that is not the best trailer, but it is the only one that's not just the Circle of Life with a bunch of images over it. Yeah, like that one.
I'll say you don't even hear like Donald Glover speak in it.
Oh, don't do that. What? Stop!
Don't do that.
Jeez. Okay, so yes, this film is from 1994. It is Disney's The Lion King. It was directed by Roger Allers, Rob Minkoff. Obviously, music contributed by geez, now I can't remember his name. Elton John and Hans Zimmer. Starring Matthew Broderick, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, James Earl Jones, Jeremy Irons, Ernie Sabella, Nathan Lane, Robert Guillaume, Rowan Atkinson, Whoopi Goldberg, many, many others. So obviously, if you are a person from North America that was a child, you've probably seen this movie. It is the story of a young lion cub, Simba, who basically witnesses the death of his father, blames himself for it, and ultimately goes on a journey of self-discovery to reclaiming his throne. And then, of course, his very Shakespearean villain of an uncle, Scar, has machinations in there. This film is often said to be just an animated version of Hamlet. I will say, while there definitely is some Hamlet in here, I think there's just a bunch of Shakespeare thrown in. There's some Macbeth, there's some King John, there's a lot of different things going on in this. And I've never seen it, but a lot of people say that the story is basically stolen straight from Kimba the Lion as well. Like I said, I've never seen it. I don't know for sure. But who's to say? It would not be above Disney to steal things and call it their own. But yeah, I mean, this movie has been highly critically acclaimed from the moment that it first came out. It is gorgeous to look at. This is probably the height of even the Renaissance era, which was the height of Disney, especially at the time. If it had been a category at the time, this would have run away with Best Animated Feature. Honestly, I'm not really sure why this wasn't nominated instead of Four Weddings at a Funeral, because they'd already nominated Beauty and the Beast for Best Picture, so not really sure why this one didn't make it through. But yeah, I mean, it's great. There's not a whole lot else to say about it. I love Jeremy Irons as Scar. Like I said, super Shakespearean villain. You can just feel it dripping from him every time he speaks. Just the malice, and it's wonderful. But yeah, I'm gonna let others carry on.
I want to, Hannah, if you don't mind me starting, because I want to comment particularly on the Kim of the Lion thing. There is a documentary on YouTube by a guy named YMS. If you have ever heard of the comparisons with the whole Kim of the Lion King thing, and you're interested in learning more, I strongly encourage each and every one of you to watch it. The entire documentary is about 2.5 hours long. He convinces you, at least me, within the first 15 minutes that they're absolutely like unrelated. Like there was no borrowing on the Lion King's part. It is its own entity. It's a fantastic video. I can't tote it enough. Again, if you're worrying about those comparisons, strongly check it out. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, moving on. Lion King is obviously a fantastic Disney film. It's considered in many people's top spots, if not their top 5. I personally consider it to be on the more overrated side with Disney movies. It's not my personal favorite Disney movie, but again, I get the appeal of it. There's a lot there for everybody. I think there's something that you can all appeal to with it. The animation is stunning. The soundtrack by why am I blanking on his name?
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer. Thank you. It was a Z. Hans Zimmer. Elton John's soundtrack. It all works fantastically well. So much so that we saw so many different studios, including Disney, trying to copy that same formula in terms of music and presentation.
Yeah, in many ways, this is the mirror opposite of North, where every element actually worked perfectly.
I was gonna say he did try to make things work with his foster parents with Timon and Pumbaa, but I see your point. Yeah, I mean, the fact that the film had to go through as many hardships as it did to even get made, because there was a lot of studio pushback to get this to actually fly, because this wasn't what Disney was making at the time. This wasn't what they saw success in. So the studio heads were thinking, no, we can't make this movie. It's too much of a risk.
No, in fact, at the time, they were making this at the same time as Pocahontas, and people were fighting to get on Pocahontas and off of this.
Yeah.
And obviously we see how both of those stack up to history. But yeah,
no, it's like I said, Lion King, there's a reason it's considered among the best by many people. Like I said, all of it comes together. So many elements come together to work so well in favor of the film. I saw this movie, I think when it came back into 3D in theaters about 10 years ago, and it was just, I still teared up during certain moments. My friend who I went with and I were the only ones in the theater, so we were singing along with it. We were having a great experience. This, unfortunately, was the only movie from our particular list this week that I didn't have the time to watch for this and prep for this, but it's The Lion King. I've seen it dozens of times. I'll probably see it again many more times. It's a fantastic film. Great voice cast, as you said. Jeremy Irons and James Earl Jones shine in this. I'm a little bit, well, we don't want to talk too much about the sequel. I'm a little bit frustrated that the only person they got to return for it was James Earl Jones. But yeah, this movie will stand the testament of time for certain. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely holds up. Mufasa's death scene is still just as impactful now as, honestly, probably even more. Like, as a kid, I don't know that it actually hit me that well, but watching it today, I was like, I'm really feeling this. This is really good.
And I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I was going to say this was my top spot, a little bit reluctantly, for our list this week. Mostly just because at least the cat was put out of its misery quickly, unlike Satantango.
I just, that just occurred to me. I was like, so ranking this in cat death.
Yeah.
I agree. There's very little negative you can say about The Lion King, I think. It's definitely in top tier Disney for me, I think. It's one of the ones, it's not quite Beauty and the Beast for me, but it's very close. And I think it's one of the ones where I think it really hits the pinnacle of combining the animation and the music in I think even when moments of the story don't work as well as maybe other Disney movies do, or fall a little flat, the music and the animated sequences along with the music together are something really, really incredible. And every single one of them, like every single one of the main ones. I don't think Timon's Hula does that much, but every single one of the main ones is something really special in the Disney canon in terms of animated sequences.
That opening sequence alone sells the film. Like,
it's so
that
great.
Was the entire, and in fact, I think that was the original trailer for the film, was just that opening sequence. And I think a lot of it was still pencil sketches when they first showed it, but just that with the sun rising, it's yeah.
And I it gets love, but I think Be Prepared is just as good. I think Be Prepared is one of the most phenomenal villain song sequences that Disney has ever done. It's
that
stunning.
And Unfortunate Souls are
it's up there. And so there's, I think, comparing all the main four Renaissance ones, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King, I think story-wise it's probably in the middle, but I think musically and in terms of marrying its visuals to its music, it elevates them both in a really beautiful, stunning way. And I think that for me, it pushed it up being my number one on the list. I do think it's not perfect. I think I have issues sometimes with Disney sidekicks, that I think some of the Timon and Pumbaa stuff runs a little long or goes a little off track. I would cut pieces of that, not all of it, but I would cut pieces of that. But other than that, I think it's very close to being closer to perfect for Disney. It's very close. And so it's one that I've loved watching it. I've gotten a chance to direct it with kids. And that's also super fun. And it's just really solid. It's one of the few Disney adaptations that I actually have not gotten the chance to see professionally on Broadway yet. One of these days, or a touring production. I see Beauty and the Beast all the time, but Lion King is still it. I want to see what they do with the story and with the puppetry. But I think it's a really great movie, and it did just nudge out my own pick for number one on my list.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought the Timon and Pumbaa thing. If we're going to talk criticisms a little bit, I agree with you. I think that Their sequence in the midpoint of the story muddles I think the message for the film a little bit, because you kind of have some uncertainty with it with Simba as a child, but then he enters the world of Timon and Pumbaa, and you start realizing like, hey, maybe they're setting this up for him having a life outside of this, and then you get so accustomed to that in that relationship that when Nala enters the scene again and brings him back into the action, I felt, for me, I wasn't really sure what we're supposed to be like wanting for Simba at this point, because we've spent so much time with him as a kid and then suddenly snapping to him as an adult, more laid back in lifestyle. I think the film does struggle a little bit in terms of conveying what he wants, more so than heeding the call of responsibility.
Yeah. And it's not a huge thing, but I think you're right. I think it does, they're well beloved, and Hakuna Matata is a great song.
Yes.
And very, very nicely done. But I don't think that they serve the purpose as well as some other Disney sidekicks do.
I would agree. But at least they aren't the gargoyles.
I maintain take out the gargoyles, and Hunchback is a perfect movie.
I absolutely agree.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
Take out a couple sections of Timon and Pumbaa or add in something else, and it's a perfect movie there.
Sad to say that's the case with like a lot of children's movies. It's like if you just pull back or even just cut out the comedic relief in the film, it's probably going to be a stronger film.
Yeah, sure. Take out a little bit of Timon and Pumbaa, but make sure you leave in Nala's bedroom eyes.
I mean, yeah.
Those.
Hey, you know what?
that's part of Can You Feel the Love Tonight? That's the animation and the music working together.
There is a culture out there that worships that. So you know what?
Oh, there absolutely is.
I will say I have said before, this is on a similar note, but of the four main Renaissance movies, I still Beauty and the Beast will always be my favorite, and partly that's because I think that's the only message that actually is like good and relatable for children, because the message of Lion King is a wild one to give to kids, and I think it's a great movie. I think it's a wonderful movie, but
not explicitly, but it's based on Shakespeare.
Yeah, and so it's just an interesting. It works.
It's a message you should give to me.
It's just an interesting choice to be like, this is the message I want my children to come out with, is to know that they should not run away from their responsibilities if they think that they have killed their father.
Yes. And that their uncles are evil.
Also, communication. That's my other. If I had to look back at critiques of the film, if in that final confrontation with Scar and Simba, he says exactly and specifically the things that he would have to say in order for Scar to continue manipulating him. If he was actually like, "Hey guys, I yelled and a bunch of beasts came by." Well. Okay.
Yeah,
I guess it's not your fault.
He never explicitly says what he, because I get why the lion cub Simba thinks that he is responsible for Mufasa's death, but I feel like adult Simba would have thought about that and realized,
Not if his friends have been saying, "Don't think about this all these years."
True.
Like, deliberately been pushed to not think about this.
Let's role play that. Hannah, I'll be you be Sarabi, and I will be Scar. Hey, Sarabi, guess what?
What?
So your husband's dead.
What happened?
He just, I was just there. There was like a. It's just a mess, man. Like I'm sorry, he's dead. He's just gone.
Wait. So what exactly happened?
But the king is dead, and it's all it's somebody's fault. Don't worry. And it's yeah. Okay, fine. You look. There was some stampede. That's what happened.
Okay. Where is Simba?
I saw him on the way back, and he's like, "Hey, dude, I gotta bounce." Wait, no. They think he's. I'm sorry. I'm getting my stories mixed up. He died too.
I think he's doubt this. He died too.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, I didn't do it, but sorry, just as a sympathy.
You haven't been really part of this pride for some time now, so I guess we'll take over from here.
No, it's you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll happily take over. See, that's the movie I want to see. That's the Lion King more than half we deserved.
Yeah, you got to know there apparently weren't very many questions, because it's just accepted. what
Yeah.
he says.
It's
I'm just like, where did they think Simba's body was? Because Mufasa's pretty obvious.
well, it doesn't like Simba at one point just like say like isn't King just being able to tell everyone what to do in the sense of the intelligence.
Apparently,
that we're-
that's exactly what it is.
And
All
of
it
course, he
is.
does. To be fair, he does come in with an army.
True,
like,
true.
so like,
Doesn't
so
really
be
give him a
prepared.
lot
He
of
came
time
in with
to
an
talk.
army of hyenas.
Yeah.
So it made it a little bit easier to kind of to make that happen.
But like
But yeah.
lion leaves. I mean, like hell, like we know from nature that like the lionesses are the true hunters of the pack. So it's like if they were keeping that iron fist in the Pride Lands, like that should be enough.
Also, have you ever noticed that their pride is basically made up of one dude and all these ladies?
Yeah.
He's basically got a harem.
Is that not the way lion prides actually do work?
I don't think there's only one male.
I might be wrong.
Maybe that's why like Simba didn't like the boy lion in the sequel because he was a boy.
He's like he's gonna take a
boys. I like
no,
all
it's
ladies.
because the sequel is Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. Ugh.
But I mean, if that is the truth, then that actually means that Nala and Simba are brother and sister.
Probably. I mean, it makes sense.
I did read a thing once that was like, okay.
Okay.
So
I'm at the edge of my
Lion
seat.
King is Hamlet and Lion King dead.
Oh.
Sorry, you cut out for
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry,
I
you cut out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, it was saying if Lion King is Hamlet and Lion King 2 is Romeo and Juliet, then Lion King 1.5 is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's exactly it.
It's basically exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's the story from their point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, is there anything else that we want to talk about this movie before we move on?
No, I guess not.
All right.
I
So
think he's awesome. That's all I got.
yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't know who provided his voice. Just gonna say that. Robert Guillaume. So that is the final film of this and final film of the list as a whole. We'll be coming back next time for the full breakdown of the full 15. But right now we have these 5. So out of these 5, obviously North was last. And I chose North as my number 5. Hannah, so did you. And Jack, I think you already said that you chose Muriel's Wedding as your number 5.
Yes.
Still kind of flabbergasted a little bit by that, but that's okay. It's your list. And as far as the best, I will say that my number 1 was Heavenly Creatures. I just really enjoyed that film. Like I said, that Peter Jackson, I think, is the best Peter Jackson. I really just connected with the creativity and the tone of that story and the way it was being told. But the number 1 for this group was both Jack and Hannah's number 1, The Lion King. I think I put it at like number 3. So, you know, yeah. But The Lion, and, you know, not a bad number 1. Like I said, you know, pretty highly acclaimed animated film. Had there been a best animated category at the time, it would have run away with it. But yeah, so looking forward, we do have, like I said, we will be having the first Teddy Awards, in which we will be not only identifying the top 5, but out of that top 5, we will then choose what we would have chosen as the number 1 film of 1994. And I'm sure we all have very different ideas of what that might be. But that's how we keep it interesting. That's why we do this, because if we all thought the exact same thing, this show wouldn't be nearly as interesting. But yes, so come back for that. We will also be presenting our own Teddy Awards for various things. For directors, for performances, for anything that we noticed in the film that we just think this needs recognition. We will be giving those awards as well. So before we sign off for this episode, I want to give you guys the opportunity. Is there anything that you want to plug or share that you've been watching or anything like that?
I will, as far as plugging, I will always plug my podcast for anybody who hasn't checked it out. Somebody Write This. We randomly generate plot synopses and then flesh them out into real stories. And we've had some really weird ones in the last couple, which has been fun. As far as what I've been watching lately, we just finished the 2-season run of The Other Two on HBO Max, which is really funny and delightful, about the two adult siblings of a kid who kind of takes off Justin Bieber style as the next tween singer, and kind of how they deal with it. And it's very, very funny, very charming, got a great cast, and I definitely highly recommend it. 2 seasons up on HBO Max.
Let's see. For plugs, I am currently in it's a podcast on Spotify called Zodiac Task Force. It is it's like a Power Rangers style, like action podcast show, some lightheartedness, like cheesy guitar riffs going in and out. It's a fun time. If you like the whole Power Rangers sort of aesthetic, it's in podcast form. It's called Zodiac Task Force. You can find it on Spotify. As far as movies, or shows, my partner and I just finished watching Midnight Mass last night, which the first 6 episodes were fantastic. The 7th episode didn't stick the landing, but it's still worth a watch, the show itself, so I'd still watch it. A lot of people I know have liked the entire show, so take that for what it's worth. If you got 7 hours and like Mike Flanagan, then give it a watch.
All right. As always, you can find me obviously doing these podcasts. You can contact us at the Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email at Gmail. The Gmail is theflyingcowpod@gmail.com. And there's also the Facebook group. You can also, of course, find us on YouTube. We are Movie Battles, where we are doing trivia game that is Disney Pixar specific. Hannah and Jack have both been on that. We, as of this recording, actually just recorded the finals of a tournament, but you can currently catch the first round of the tournament on YouTube. That's a lot of fun. You can also find me. I am playing another trivia game with, I may have mentioned on here before, the movie Trivia Schmodown. I'm not in the Schmodown proper, but I am in their online league, which is called the FCL, the First Class League. You can find that on Twitch, their Twitch stream. Just search the Schmodown and you'll find it. That's SCHMOEDOWN. And also on their YouTube channel. So if you search the Schmodown on Twitch or YouTube, you can find me in the FCL, the First Class League, playing the Flying Cow. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. You can check that stuff out. But yes, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Jack and Hannah for helping me with this crazy project. And never forget, moo.